Good morning, Bookless classroom. How are you? This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We are here in the classroom. It is January 29th, and we are here on day 305. Somebody's bangs need cutting. Luckily, I do that too. All right, let's keep moving. It took me a while because I had to put this together, so I'm a little bit behind the eight ball. After our UNESCO stop, huh? You know, it is hard to prepare a lesson to teach when you don't know anything about the lesson until you start preparing for it. I usually know a lot about my topics when I teach, but I've said it before, not world history, because who knows what they've been lying to us about. Now we're talking about Greece today. And this is so interesting because, as I've said, you can put all the wars together using one book and, you know, kind of get a really good idea of what happened in the wars. But that's about all you have from the history books. And so you've got to really decide that you're piecing together, you know, and the system of things you kind of have to, for your mind and for how you like to see the world, figure out what your system of things is for your checks and balances. I was on AI in between breaks and asked several different kinds of questions. The first one was, I knew Catholics liked Alexander the Great, but he's not a saint. And I think they wanted him to be a saint, but he did too many terrible things that they couldn't make him a saint. But they wanted to make him a saint. And so it goes to show you sort of the mindset of what we're going to start moving into, which is really Western thought that is based on Catholicism. Because Catholicism is based in Rome. Its roots are in Rome. And prior to that, Greece, with the Greek New Testament, and prior to that, Mesopotamia with the Old Testament. All right, so we clearly see in Greece a progression of Western thought and the roots of Western thought, and also just such raw, unbridled making of history. Yeah, I would say that, making of history. So we know that they came down through from Mesopotamia in some form or another. They could have been from Africa. Or they could have been in Mesopotamia on the African Ethiopian side. That certainly is feasible, right? And some of them, Japheth style, likely was like, yeah, you know what, get me the hell out of here. Right? So let's use this as my backdrop, since that's what we're talking about, all right? I was looking for a more of a studious, lawyer-like wooden background look. Could we have that, please? Oh, it's going to cover my face. It doesn't go behind me. Too bad. That's what I want. You know what? I'm going to get a background that's like a varnished wood background. I'm here in my library/study, and we will be looking at Greece today. And while we're looking at Greece, let's put up our map. Could we do that, please? Could I get somebody to put up the map? Is somebody listening? Thank you. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to use this as a backdrop as I'm talking. And so you've got this leftover. We have these leftover kings. We have these leftover kings. They're real kings. Who even knows what happened beforehand? Right? I mean, scientists with their blabbermouths, they really are the most unintellectual bunch, aren't they? They don't sit over there and ponder really anything, do they? They don't ponder what they're doing. They don't ponder the effects of it. They don't ever ask the question why. They are the most unintellectual group there is on the planet, wouldn't you have to say? I mean, when you think about it, scientists, could you think about it for a minute? How intellectually challenging you are? Could we just think about it for a minute? Do you get your MD because you work with the FDA? Those motherfucking dicks. What the hell's going on here in the classroom? Did I say day 305? Did I say January 29th? I do believe I did. I think I made all the introductions. And now we're introducing Greece. Where's John Travolta? All right. So we have to think of kings before the flood, seems to me, and maybe after the flood, these creatures from the Black Lagoon, or the red area on the map, which isn't necessarily so if they came from Mesopotamia, right? The idea here is they spread there, not they came from there, right? That's the idea, is that they spread there. This map is showing a map of descendants spreading in that direction. And there you can see Italy here and Greece. So when they're saying that they were invaded constantly by Asia Minor, and then some from Egypt here, I mean, it really is suggesting that a couple things. If the flood really was predominantly there, which you would have assumed which you would assume it would be, I kind of want to see what is Turkey. I'm trying to figure out what is Turkey. It looks like the big turkey leg there, because Turkey's pretty big. So let's assume that the flood started there, right? Well, you have a pretty big mountainous area where people would get up to the mountains and you might not be able to see, right, that they were able to survive the flood. Now, coming out of surviving the flood, who knows what the beliefs were when they went into the flood, but coming out of the surviving flood might make you think either you have God on your side and you are a king, and or could be a king. In particular, if you were a king and had all of your people, carrying you on their, canes and their backs all the way up the mountain. That porcelain temple is just blowing my mind. Early birds. And now I'm thinking, they called them steps. Right? They called them steps here. I'm thinking getting up to the higher land. If you don't know where I'm going in my mind and why I'm stopping and thinking, I'm going to the place of getting up to higher lands. And even those buildings, don't they look like steps? Easy to ascend, right? Kind of seems to me. So we've got coming out of the flood, before the flood, people who survived the flood having this idea that they are kings. I mean, starting with, and who knows? So then you think about what you know about Greece and the Greek gods, right? So there we are with Japheth. Now this is not a leader like Shem, not a family man like Shem, not shamed like Ham's descendants, not all of them. And why should they be? Ham, yes. But Canaan? This is a whole different era as well. That is not stately behavior. What the underlying message is that Ham slept with his mother. That's the underlying message. And then descendants are cursed. And then there's the act, and then there's the supposition that goes along with it, right? I don't mean the actual act. I mean like the apocalyptic mentality is what I'm talking about, right? Like recreating just a modern version of it. You know what I'm saying? I think you do. So it seems to me that Japheth is just, I'm out of here. This is bullshit. I don't know what's going on, and we're going to go. And now if you have that God mentality, you can be the producers. Don't forget that Japheth's descendants were the producers. Ham's were too, though. They all were in one way or another. Shem upheld the morals of the family. Ham's descendants considered. They were the thinkers. They considered, and they carried the shame, and these were the women. I mean, come on. Egypt backed off. Egypt was like a mighty empire of pharaohs, and by the grace of God, right, saw God, and then they were the ones who had to decide, boy, this hair is like flying all over the place. And then they had to decide, right? And so yeah, don't even think about it. Not cutting it. Yeah, because all I do is have that fly away on a shorter basis, and then it'd be like, whoa. Okay. So we can see this as a family microcosm, which isn't so microcosm. I mean, come on, we're covering the planet. And are we going to have this same kind of repetition on a universal level, literally a universal level? Well, folks, you already know. I'm yellow. I'm Shem. I'm from the group of Shem. I don't carry the anxiety or the guilt or the puzzling life of this group. But we sure can share the planet. These guys are like, let's get the hell out of here. Right? Okay, so, and by the way, okay, so that was a future extension of this map, but let's get back to the map and let's get back to the personalities of red, yellow, and green. And see if they can get along, G-Diet. What colors do they make? That, I don't think that would get along. All right. So Japheth, they are playful. These are the gods who were playful. They were storytellers. And with the thinkers over here, they're like, you make no frickin' sense. I can't figure you out. Go build a statue, go build a bridge. And then they did. Right? And then they did. So, and the same thing with this. They're like, yeah, you're sinful, you're evil, get out. And they're just like, you know, girls just want to have fun. Let's wear red and go out. I don't care if it's on my shoes. I don't care if it's on my coat or my dress or in my hair. I want it. Right? So that is, like I said, you could see it with this kingly state of mind, because they all came from kings. And they're just like, Shem's like, shut up about it. And Ham's like, oh my gosh, I've taken it all too far. And Japheth was like, what the F are you talking about? We haven't taken it far enough. You're Ham. You're Ham. Let me show you, Ham, what it's like to be Ham. First of all, change your green to red. A night on the town. That's how we warm up in these northern areas. Right? I mean, just really kind of crazy. So, if you think about that mentality, you can understand Greece a little bit more. Greece had no walls. And eventually, they were going to be taken. Now, you know, in my mind, walls are just smart. I mean, to make a wall, to keep people out, it's just smart. We were reading in the Bookless classroom. Uh-oh. We have to read the Bookless classroom. We have to read the Reader's Digest. That's what we have to do. So we were reading in the Reader's Digest. What were we reading? I was like, I don't remember. We're going to read this in just a second. Now I have it in my hands and we'll explain this. But I want you to get that sort of, oh, we were, there it is. We were reading in the Reader's Digest that they were able to keep people out with mechanisms of technology that are unheard of today, that are would be more progressive, more effective, more solution oriented than what we have today. What we have today is buy it or you're SOL, right? Shit out of luck. I know people don't know that. Because it's really more like SOL, Sewell. Anyway, so get that framework. We like to frame things. We sure do. Get that framework here in a good way. That Japheth, they're all intellectuals. But Japheth is like, listen, if it feels good, do it. And this is the whole Western, come now over here to America. It is the whole Westernized thought. Yeah, no problemo. We've got all of you, right? But they were peace. They were like peace. And then Virginia, right? The nerve of peace. Don't think we've forgotten that. We sure haven't. And so, no walls. But again, walls have become simply a capitalist thing. You can't figure this fucking thing out because it was figured out in March of 1937. And we were reading about it in awe. And then it's like, aw, it's gone. No, I'm sorry. We can't protect you. Oh, that's going to cost you. Don't you remember the mafia? Haven't you heard of Italians? All right. That is, stereotype. But I don't know who's doing this. I do know who has a reputation. They love the entertainment industry. They bought the entertainment industry. Let's read, and before we start, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this article. So I said we were on to, what was it, October 1937 in our Reader's Digest. And I cleaned up our Reader's Digest. Do you see it already? Of all of our little check marks, because I wanted to leave this as clean. There's one on eBay or Etsy or something, I don't know, because I had to get the, whatever, it doesn't matter, for $13. This one alone for $13, and it's a mess. Look at this. So I wanted to leave it in, and you could be so when those criminal demons come through my windows and say, she must have, I didn't even highlight it, nothing. I mean, and no coffee stains, no nothing. But as you can see, there was one article without a check mark, right? And so I went back to the article, and I'm not exactly sure of the mindset in skipping that article, but I do know I probably plan on going back to it because I left that green thing there. It was worthwhile. I think for the timing, it was just a little too controversial. I just didn't want all the Bookless classroom to be about punching you right in the face. So I left it unmarked. I left it in the book. This is March 1937. We're on fire. We're last of our 3 days on. That might have been another thing. I didn't want to be Almighty Tuesdaying it, and then coming into, the Union Revolution. So March 1937, this is called Seattle's One-Man Revolution, condensed from the Saturday Evening Post. This is by Alva Johnston. You transact business in Seattle today by courtesy of the longshoremen. You exist there by kindness of the longshoremen. Ever since Mayor John F. Dorr, D-O-R-E, The bluntest man in American politics took office last June. Seattle has been under a sort of martial law by longshoremen and Teamsters. In most industrial cities, there are a variety of unions, each jealous of its own jurisdiction and ready to resist encroachment by other unions, a system which prevents any one or two unions from growing overwhelmingly powerful. But in Seattle, transportation overshadows other activities, and hence the transportation unions, the Teamsters and longshoremen, have no rivals. They dominate weaker unions. They have become extremely active in organizing new unions, and their aim is to make Seattle a 100% closed shop town. A 100% closed shop town. The Seattle Teamsters formerly claimed jurisdiction over nearly everything on wheels. Today, they seek to organize everybody in Washington who makes or handles any product that is carried on wheels. The bakers, laundrymen, cleaners and dyers, milkmen, brewers, and wholesale grocery employees, to give a few examples, are all Teamsters. In Seattle, the labor machine is enmeshed with the political machine. In Seattle, the labor machine is enmeshed with the political machine. With their influence over votes, the labor leaders are natural political leaders, and some of them take advantage of their opportunities. The state of Washington forbids the sale of hard liquor by the glass, and so the speakeasy still flourishes in Seattle. It is not necessary to say that where speakeasies exist, they pay for protection. The greatest source of offside political profit, however, is the income from gambling, particularly from slot machines, which are very popular in Seattle. Easy money from graft tends to prejudice the politicians in favor of the status quo. So the very strength of the unions is a stand-pat factor in Seattle. Instead of seeking to destroy capitalism, Seattle unionism seeks to marry it and settle down, setting up labor and capital alliances that have two dominant policies: a soak the consumer policy and a kill the independent competitor policy. Now, when they say that Seattle's working with the political machine, know this in modern times. The political machine is business. That's capitalism. They're talking about capitalism, which is business, is marrying. So in today's language, that's the left is marrying the right. The far left is marrying the far right. And I was just thinking about that picture a while ago in my mind, right? So how do you get the far left to marry the far right? It's easy, through fascism, baby. I mean, the far left are these radical lefties that the right complains about. The far right are these capitalists that the left complains about. Not the far left, the left. Not the far right complains. The right complains about the far left. And what have they done? They've turned from going one way and then the other way and faced each other. They get as far away from the other way as they can. And now they're 360 degrees. They turn around, face each other, and shake hands. Picture it! Where's my art? Where's the art department on that? Instead of seeking to destroy we already said that. That have two dominant policies, a soak the consumer policy and a kill the independent competitor policy. That's capitalism. That's capitalism, baby. And they shook hands with the far left, which represents the unions now. The principle of the thing is old enough. In earlier days, it might have been called a ring or trust. The Sherman Act alludes to it as a conspiracy I'm hungry. In restraint of trade. In Al Capone's Chicago, it was a racket. Under the Blue Eagle, it was a code. In Seattle, it is, quote, a voluntary NRA, end quote. Mayor Dorr, first elected mayor in 1932 on an economy platform that he carried out to the letter, cutting his own salary and those of all city employees. The businessmen of Seattle hailed him as one of the coming men of America, but they gave him only languid support when he came up for re-election in 1934, and he was beaten by the votes of labor. Mr. Dorr ran again in 1936, and he made sure of election by quietly lining up labor leaders in his favor. He promised a labor administration, and he has made good. With his usual bluntness, he said, Brother Dave Beck, leader of the Teamsters, was the greatest factor in my election, and I am going to pay back my debt to him and the Teamsters in their next 2 years, regardless of what happens. All right. Fast forward to today. What do they do now today? Fast forward to today. And I am going to pay back my debt to him and the Teamsters in the next 2 years, regardless of what happens. Is that today? Is that how you feel, Republican Party, about your Republican president? He's got your back. The mayor paid his debt by allowing the Teamsters and longshoremen to use their own brand of martial law in Seattle. Johnny Dorr, formerly a leading trial lawyer of the Northwest, belongs to the Pitchfork School of Oratory, a celebrated roarer and flamethrower of the criminal courts. He carries his obstreperous eloquence into politics. When 500 women marched on the Capitol of Washington at Olympia to protest against the price-raising rackets in Seattle, he called them perfumed fur coat hussies and publicly speculated on the methods by which they obtained their furs. He offered the opinion that they were addled and that they ought to stay home and tend to their knitting. He chose the Chamber of Commerce as his forum for predicting the triumph of the closed shop and for allowing labor to carry out its program by violence. Quote, there can't be any such thing as a labor union without coercion, he told them. Quote, the word peaceful and the word picketing don't go together. An illuminating part of the Chamber of Commerce address was his assertion that the big businessmen of his state loved the closed shop because it united them with organized labor and price-fixing combinations. Quote, industry, he said, wants to be controlled by labor unions. He mentioned the brewers, among others, as delighted to be under union control because it enabled them to maintain a price for beer that they would not be able to maintain otherwise. which is true. You get an undersized glass of beer for a dime in Washington, and no saloon dares to give you more because it would be declared unfair and picketed. Mayor Dorr added that the laundrymen had an agreement with union labor to fix prices and that the laundry owners would not give up the agreement for $1 million. Laundry prices, incidentally, are staggeringly high in Seattle. You know what's staggeringly high in Seattle right now, from what I hear? Homelessness. Mayor Dorr's description of the contentment of certain business interests with the closed shop and price-fixing arrangement is not overdrawn. Politics, business, and labor are all tangled up in highly capitalistic combination. The longshoremen have supplied most of the personnel for labor turmoil in Seattle, but the Teamsters organization is even more important. It is possible to protect non-union longshoremen at their work on their peers, but a non-union Teamster can always be trailed, caught, and disciplined. The longshore strike of 1934 was won in Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco because of the support of the Teamsters. It was lost in Los Angeles because the ocean-borne freight is there loaded directly into rail cars, so that there were no Teamsters to win the battle for the longshoremen. In the drive to make Seattle a 100% closed shop town, unusual tactics have been employed. In one case, for example, an organizer said to a Seattle businessman, "We want to organize your men." "That's all right with me," said the employer, "but they don't want to join the union," said the organizer. "What can I do about that?" asked the employer. "Make them," was the reply, followed by an ultimatum that all employees must join the union in 5 days or the employer would be boycotted. The employer happened to be an undertaker. He could not risk having unfair banners borne in his funeral processions or accidents happening to his hearses. So his employees signed up. Before last June, the picket regarded the law as his enemy. Within the last 6 months, however, there has been a complete change. To inflict bodily harm on a non-union man is not now considered law-breaking, but law enforcing. The militant union man esteems it is not only a privilege but a civic duty to beat up an employee who tries to go through a picket line to his place of business. The attitude of both the federal and local authorities aids in building the theory that the unorganized man is an outlaw and a pariah who has no rights that an organized man is bound to respect. The union wrecking squad has the status of a posse engaged in helping the authorities to crack down on the common enemy. When mob picketing started, Seattle experienced only a fraction of the violence that has been expected. One reason for this is that when the mob lays siege to a plant or business house, the power of the mob is too manifest to be disputed. Only a man seeking death or a month in the hospital would attempt to pierce the wall of human flesh. After a few sluggings had made this clear, it was enough to keep a skeleton force on duty. The triumph of violence was complete. It seemed to the rest of the country a little fantastic that the Post-Intelligencer, Seattle's only morning newspaper, could be blotted out of existence for 3.5 months simply because a Hearst executive had fired a dramatic critic and a photographer. The avowed reason for the strike was that the critic and cameraman had been discharged for activity in organizing the newspaper guild. However, it is also true that the Post-Intelligencer had been exposing the labor capital price-fixing combinations that raised the cost of necessities in Seattle, and that it had been attacking the enormous gambling machine industry as a source of political graft. Are they looking for their pay? The Seattle Newspaper Guild could not have closed the newspaper without the longshoremen who picketed the plant. Official Seattle gave its support to this stranglehold on the paper. The post-intelligentsia strike was settled by a Hearst capitulation that included the hiring of Franklin D. Roosevelt's young son-in-law, John Boettiger, as new publisher. The usual racket or voluntary NRA arrangement in Seattle provides for maintaining prices and preventing any new competitor from opening a business. The policing is done by the union, which boycotts price cutters or new competitors. The system sometimes goes further. In one case, an organizer called a conference of 9 businessmen and made certain demands. He added, "We can make this worth your while. There are 13 concerns in your business. That is too many. If your 9 firms will come to terms with us, we will eliminate the other 4. How? Simply by making rules compelling them to have so many employees that with their small business, the costs will sink them." Their particular offer was declined, but there has been a high mortality rate among small firms in highly unionized lines of business. The union organizer dictates to business in other ways. One large supply house, for example, discovered that a trucking firm, which was paid by weight, had been systematically exaggerating the weight of goods delivered. The supply house arranged to have its trucking done by another trucking concern. Labor organizers said no. They threatened to boycott both the supply house and the new trucking firm if any change were made. Another man who felt the effect of union power was an able executive who was engaged for $350 a month and commissioned to act as sales manager for a chain of bakeries. His appointment was canceled by a union chief who said, "If that bakery chain needs a sales manager, we will supply him one of our men." The executive was dropped. The union had no man with training for the position. The head of the bakery chain had to act as his own sales manager. The end of the world does not appear to be impending in Seattle. Business picked up steadily throughout 1936 until the coastwise shipping strike in November, but many businessmen say present conditions are curtailing investment. You hear on every side of large industries which intended to build plants in Seattle, but which have canceled their plans pending developments. Okay, that was the last article. And so you can certainly see how 2 sides of the same coin are trying to combat one another when they have no possibility of reaching the other side. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We are here in the classroom. That was our Reader's Digest, and we are now done with our Reader's Digest March 1937. How about that? And how about just the luxurious way we blend the old, the so very old, with the old, with the new. Day 305 in the classroom. It's January 29th. I will be back here in about a half an hour. Wow. We haven't even been here for 45 minutes. No, I paused the recording. Oh, but that's because I was what? Taking a break? What was I doing? I don't know. I don't remember. Let's keep going. Let's get a few more of these done then. Oh, that's not where we want to be. Okay, this is where we left off yesterday. And this basically was a summary of all that we've studied in our ancient history so far. And then all the areas that we've covered across the land. What we're talking about now is all the area north of here, all right? And where we're going to get into, which is going to be which is our European descendants, all right? Now, I want you again to remember what was our framework before I went into the Reader's Digest. And our framework for this is that we are really working with people who I believe have a king mentality and also a Greek god background, which can be made and seen very clear from the people's eyes, but not necessarily from the eyes of those kings and queens, those kings and queens and queens. And what I mean by that is the real background story. So it really does seem to be that was descendants of these great kings who are telling the stories, right? And so that's the reason why we see this kind of I hypothesize that is the reason why we see this kind of distant impact and viewpoint. It is a history from Homer of wars, starting with the greatest of the gods, Zeus, and then in the next story, the Odyssey, really looking at more human forms, right? And this great respect, or maybe not respect. Well, they don't have respect for one another, that's for sure. But an understanding of the power of the universe, an understanding of the power of nature and the universe, which in my mind represents the Almighty God. It's likely to be the Almighty God. So we've got these playful Japheth descendants who know their real God, but don't know them from a personal perspective. Only know them from like a history book, right? These were the wars. Okay, all right, so we've memorized that they've done that just like you memorize your presidents, but what do you know about their real background? You don't, right? Unless you read biographies or listen to them on tape. Stuff like that to get the real person behind why they would have made these kinds of decisions, right? So a very different. So to me, these stories, which are so beautifully illustrated, and oh, by the way, don't you find that interesting as well? Doesn't that look like the eye on the back of your dollar bill? But instead of being a circle, it's a triangle. So very interesting about what is the background message. And by the way, isn't that exactly what that verb was about? And I can never remember it. I never remember what that stupid ass company's name is. And I should, because it is absolutely so very telling. Which is oh, there we go. Subtext. I can never remember that stupid ass name. How could I not remember that? I mean, this is just so stinking all about subtext. Who could even stand it? Right? Right? Are you with me? You know what I'm saying? Subtext. 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 The verb, the nerve of peace. And Japheth people and Western descendants can likely say that, right? I think that they could say we should be able to keep our walls down and not worry about this, but that's because we're entitled to be safe. That's because we're entitled to be kings. I've got to get that actually off of there. I think I pulled that up and everything slowed right down. all of those there so I can shut these down. I just have to shut down a few things that are dragging my system down. There we go. Okay. So let me just, and likely has to do with the, Bible Gateway was on that line of thinking and streaming. So hopefully that will clear it. But actually, you know what? We'll clear it if I close it because I don't need that Bible Gateway anymore. We're all good with Ezra, right? Are we all good with Ezra? If we're not, let's just take a quick peek at that. And that's how we do it in the classroom. That's how teachers do it, is what I'm saying. There was this part of Ezra. Now remember, that has Cyrus the Great, right? And the next part of Ezra is this idea of, I don't ever want to do that again, so that we are enslaved because we forsook our God. I think that's how you say it. And part of that was this cleansing. If you remember, that's where we started from, was this idea of cleansing. So that's what he's talking about. He's getting down on his knees here, Ezra. Yeah, there's all these eyes. So I'm assuming since it's the book of Ezra, but it may not be. I'm not quite sure, but I think so. And you can see here the humiliation that we were slaves, yet our God did not forsake us. He extended us his mercy. All right? So, just unbelievably powerful in the truth coming to the Bible, history coming into the Bible, Cyrus the Great, Cyrus II coming to his the aid, right? Cyrus II, there's another V right there, right? Coming to the aid and freeing them. Moses number 2, freeing them, and God not forsaking them. So this is, and then when you think about it from the perspective that we were talking about with Shem, right? And this idea of keeping the family together kind of thing, and the importance of the family. This is right there, right here, Shem's area. This is Ham's area here, right? And then what was India over there in that stuff? Oh, India would have been way down over here. And part of the invasion that we're going to talk about into Greece. Okay? So that's where India is. So when we're looking at that, there's India, right? Big red circle, that is all to the east of the Hamites and the Shemites, right? Now we're going up into, well, you can't see it from this perspective. Now we're going, am I pointing in the right direction? No. West of here. Now we'll be going west of here, north and west. All right? So have you sort of gotten yourself a little situated on the map there? We are right in the center here and go north of the western coast of, that's Africa. That big continent is Africa. And right above, I mean, and when you take a look at how huge Africa is, compared to right above that is little Spain. And we were in the southernmost tip of Spain, so we could see Africa. And it's called the Dark Continent because it just looks dark. It's just black. And that's supposed to be Morocco over there. So it's so interesting. But right above Africa is where we're talking about. And to the east of Africa is where the Shemites are from. So Africa, the Hamites, to the east, the Shemites, and the rest of the world, the Japheths, with this kind of entitled attitude that they came from kings and monarchs. And what you did was you left America right here with that attitude and no skills to get along. Do you hear what I'm saying? We are the descendants of Japheth. We have a Western ideology. And if you want to know where that came from, stick around. We're starting to tell you right now. Sure you are. Oh, you know what? Just get with the background. Okay, so remember, this is Asia Minor here. And even here, that's coming north and then going to the west. And these are the people invading Greece. Did you get that with all the hand motions? Let's start. Greece. The mainland Greece is in the southern extension and end of the Balkan Peninsula. So all of that is ancient Greece. You can see there, right here, it says Greece right there. So that is at the end of the peninsula. That's a peninsula. 3 sides are surrounded by water of the mainland, the Balkans. All right? And you can see right there, it says Balkan Peninsula. That helps us along as well. Most of Greece is divided into small compartments based on mountain ranges. Given much of the grain needs to be imported, Greece engaged in commerce through the sea. Vases and the like would be traded for grain. Northern and western Greece being constantly invaded by, and here's their quote, I put in quote, barbarians from the north, remained savage until Alexander and the Macedonians took over leadership of the government of Greece and most of the known world. All right? So when Alexander and the Macedonians took over Greece, they were considered savage. So those playful little nobodies with no walls, because what they're interested in is, well, you've got the reputation. So you're interested in sex. So you've got the reputation. You've got it. This is from our newer encyclopedia, the Southwestern volume I call it encyclopedia. It's a volume set. So the official name is the Hellenic Republic. Now, this is important to remember because when you read about Hellenic mindsets or society, what they're talking about is the what's the word I want? Primitive sexual nature, no holes barred, pantheism, panacea is all associated, synonymous with Hellenistic verbiage, with Helen. That's why we don't name anyone Helen anymore. Like Helen, Helen. 50,000 square miles today. Parliamentary government, I looked it up. Yes, I looked up the population. Yes, capital Athens. The language is Greek. The literacy rate is 97%. I found that very interesting. I didn't compare it to the United States literacy rate because I don't really care, because I already figured out that our literacy rate really does amount to about 50% in this country. Civilization of Greece began on the Aegean island of Crete, known as the Minoans, named after King Minos. Their language remains unknown. Their script began in 1700 BC, was almost wholly their own, along with their art. Hittite documents emphasize Greeks as a powerful influence. So Hittite documents associated with Egypt and Egyptians are noticing Greeks as a powerful influence. And as we know, the Greek gods are synonymous with the Egyptian gods. Right? Yes. We've pulled that up before. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're very different. It's the culture and the arts are their own. Those are synonymous with Roman gods. So it's the Roman Western. So very, very different. I'm sorry. So Egypt, no, very different system of things. The Trojan War was Greece's war with Troy, was the last of their expansion, which occurred around 1200 BC. Beehive tombs display the wealth and grandeur of this era. This is a World Heritage Site. So that's what we're going to be doing now that we learn more about the World Heritage Sites, is we are going to be combining them in a naturalistic kind of way, so we show our reference for nature and the grandeur of knowledge that we have acquired from it. All right? So we're going to incorporate World Heritage Sites into our history of this area. And of course, they're going to all come up early because these World Heritage Sites, relative to Greece in particular, are quite ancient. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks so much for joining me here in the Bookless classroom. We did make it through our hour, even though I think it ended up being a little bit longer, but that's because we had a break, right? Right? Oh, not that long. Okay, not that much longer. All right, thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom on day 305, right there. And it's January 29th. Can you not? There, how's that? January 29th. Almost done with January. We'll see you in February and then get rolling for that Super Bowl that the poll people can never watch any longer. What ended up happening? We can't watch no football anymore. It's Dr. Feravich. Thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom and putting up with the accents that help make this more enjoyable in order for us to keep building a healthier mind a healthier body, and a healthier spirit for you.